Just to go over briefly what I'm covering in this video is how to get a shading layer. Now you can see that each one of these sides, if I turn the wireframe on, has the upper section, and in this case this is the red side here. There's a very large dark shadow where the inside of this bump out is, and that would be right here. It has a very soft circular shadow around it. So how do we get this shading layer for a 3D object? Obviously this is before any of the stuff has been painted. It is quote-unquote flatten mapped, where every single face is mapped independently of every single thing else. There's no overlap of any of these faces anywhere on this texture. You need to have your object set as an editable poly. You need to have the unwrapping done via the unwrap UVW modifier, and that's located here in the modifier list right there. And I'll open up the UV editor here so you can take a look at that. So let's go over some of the settings in the render to texture window. You can see I went there, rendering and render to texture, or you can simply just hit the 0 key on your horizontal number row at the top of the keyboard. It brings up the same window. What that brings up is a lot of options here. So we need to go over what we're going to set up here. You need to go to render settings, and I'm going to use mental ray daylighting high, and I'm going to load all those presets. And I'm going to scroll down here. You can see the object is selected. Make sure the object is selected. If you click away from it before you open this, then there won't be any of these options available. Make sure you have your object selected so you can work in this window. You'll see that the object name is listed there. The first setting after setting the renderer, we need to talk about padding. What is padding? Let me open the UV editor here and we can talk about that real quick. When it renders the shadow, it's going to render past or pad that edge by 2 pixels in this case. And you can see I have padding set to 2. We need to go to mapping coordinates using existing channel. Make sure that's selected. If you have multiple channels being used, obviously you want to select the correct channel for the unwrap UVW modifier. Make sure that matches, but there's only one in this scene, so there's only one available in that list. Right now we need to tell this renderer what we want it to render. So I'm going to click the add button right here. It brings up this box of different things that you can select to be rendered. For this method I'm going to use the Ambient Occlusion, parentheses MR, and that stands for mental ray. So I'm going to click on the add elements button, and you can see it populates the table. What I want to do is click on file name and type, and I'll click that box here next to the file name and type window here. And it brings up a new one where I can change what kind of file format. We'll go ahead and set that for .png, and we'll click save. We'll do RGB 24-bit 16.7 million colors, alpha channel, and interlaced. And we'll make sure it says target map slot diffuse color. We'll make sure our element background color is true white. And we're going to change the map size to 1024 by 1024. You can click on these quick preset buttons over here, or you can manually enter what your texture size is. Next thing you'll see is the selected element and unique settings. If you're familiar with mental ray rendering, some of this stuff should be pretty familiar to you. Samples is basically the resolution of the shadows. For this I'm going to leave it at 16. Typically you're going to be working around 128 to 256. For the one that I did previously it was 512, and it took about 20 minutes for my machine to render that. So obviously the higher the number, the more complex the shadows are going to be, and the better it's going to look, but the longer it's going to take. Obviously you want your bright to be white and your dark to be black. You can mess around with that if you're setting your environment in some other colored environment. Typically you wouldn't have that in a NASCAR racetrack, but you can play around with that and see what different results you can get. Save source, you want to make sure that that's selected. Save source, create shell. Make sure you have a selection box there. Duplicate source to baked. Make sure that's selected as well. And because we want this to output a PNG file that we can apply to our texture, so you want to make sure you check render to files only and keep source materials. And I'm going to click the render button, and it brings up two new windows, and what you'll see is a mental ray render to texture process window, and then the output window over here. It's actually going to save that file on your desktop or wherever you chose to save that in that window right here. But when it's done, it will spit out a file that looks like this right here. And what you do is you open that in Photoshop. I'll go ahead and open it. And it'll look like very similar to this. What you want to do is you want to hit Control A to select all, Control C to copy all, and then go over to your texture, and you want to do Edit, Paste Special, Paste in Place. So you can see it pasted that shading layer as a white background with the shading on top of it. So what you would want to do is open the layer styles or double click on the layer in Photoshop. Just change that to a multiply. And in this example I'll just use 80%. Move this out of the way. Move that slider to wherever you think the shading looks good. In this case, just for visual clarity, I used 80%. So hopefully that shows you how you can get realistic shading fairly quickly, and apply the same logic that you would apply to painting a car, to painting your objects and trackside objects, buildings. So I hope you have a good day. Thanks for watching.